Many of you have seen the news stories, and you've watched as the continued societal turmoil continues in our country and in, frankly, all of the West as turmoil and societal changes are going on. You've read the story of the city clerk, the county clerk in Kentucky, who has refused to issue not just same-sex marriage license, but marriage license since the Supreme Court sent down their ruling this summer. And a federal judge put her in jail. Regardless of where you stand on this or that issue, it's not really relevant. Because the reality is the society is changing. And it is foolish for anybody who thinks anything about any of this to think that somehow change or somehow conflict or somehow difficulties in life don't have consequences. Life is filled with consequences. And with the only issue, in fact, the standard of maturity in the earth, the standard of maturity for adults isn't life without consequences, but the courage and the intestinal fortitude and the maturity to deal with the consequences of our choices. If you are somehow under the delusion that your life should be freed from consequences simply because you're a good person or you meant well, sorry, that's not the world. Even science says for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. I have friends on all sides of all of these issues that are going on, and they're just amazed that the other friends are thinking the way they think, regardless of what their opinion is. They're just amazed. How can't they see how right I am? And yet, ladies and gentlemen, we humans have the most notorious ability of being short-sighted in our choices. Let me put this down out of the realm of politics into just the realm of just being adults. I can't tell you how many times I have gone on a diet. Can't tell you. I gave up counting simply because I have been losing the same 40 pounds for 20 years. It's just what is. And no matter how hard I try, there are times I'm doing great. There are times, nobody laugh, when not so great. But the challenge is, it just as I stand outside of myself and watch myself, I am amazed at the destructive patterns that I have in my life that are the most stubborn patterns I have ever seen. And each time I foolishly engage in these destructive patterns, I somehow believe this time the consequences won't be the same. And, this is the reason why sitcoms are funny, folks. This is the reason why jokes are funny. Because no matter how hard we try, if we conduct ourselves in the same manner, we should not expect different results. I want you to look at our gospel lesson today. Jesus says the kingdom of heaven. Now I want you to watch this because I don't know about any of you, but I want to be a part of the kingdom of heaven. I don't know about you. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. That's your business. I want to be a part of the kingdom of heaven. I want to enjoy living forever. Because you've heard me say it before, you're going to live forever. That's a settled issue. And your faith, brothers and sisters, whether you realize it or not, your faith is meant to teach you how to enjoy living forever. And whether you live forever, whether you enjoy living forever or don't enjoy living forever, has everything to do with you taking your faith seriously enough to apply it to your everyday life. It's not a cultural decoration. It's not a habit that you happen to have fallen into. It's not something that you just decided one day you're going to do. Our faith is meant to prepare us to enjoy eternity forever. Other than that, it's just a nice club. But faith is more than that. Look at what Jesus says in our gospel lesson. The kingdom of heaven is like a king who invited the people to the marriage of his son. How many of you realize that the church is called the bride of Christ? That's what the church is called. The bride of Christ. You're called the bride of Christ if you're in the church. And so there is going to be a wedding banquet. In fact, if you look in the book of the Revelation, what you see there, that big banquet that's in the book of the Revelation, that's a wedding banquet. When the Son is married forever to his bride. And so, the king invites everyone to come to the wedding banquet, and they just blow him off. Now that's kind of gutsy. I don't know if you've ever been in a kingdom before. We Americans, we don't know much about kings, at least officially. We don't know much about kings. But in those days, living under a king and living in a kingdom was just a normal world. And if you go up to the king and say, king, I just don't really like what you're doing at all. That's the last anybody ever hears of you. You're gone. And so in a kingdom, the king is in charge. Why do you think the old saying is, it's good to be king? And so the king throws the banquet and nobody comes. So he sends his servants. Come, I've invited you to celebrate with me. I've invited you to partake of the bounty of my kingdom. And they laugh at the servants, and they mistreat the servants, and they kill the servants. Just like we have laughed and killed at the prophets who've come to tell us the truth that we've rejected because it wasn't convenient for us, or it didn't make us feel good, or it wasn't exactly what we wanted to hear. We've laughed at them, and we've made fun of them, and we've killed the prophets over and over again. We humans have that background. And so the king sent his army, and he wiped those people out. But then he said, the banquet hall is still empty. And he tells his servants, go and get folks who shouldn't be here. Go out into the highways and the hedges, and one other place it says, and compel them to come in so that my house may be full. And so the servants go and get all kinds. And what does the scripture say? They go and get the good and the bad. That means I have a chance. They go and they get the good and the bad, but even then, even though the ones who usually aren't invited to the king's court, the ones who are outsiders, the ones who are strangers, the ones who didn't grow up in the king's house, they get invited to come. And yet, even with that blessing, that bounty, that unbelievable gift, there's still one who believes that he can act any way he wants without consequences. He goes to the wedding banquet without a wedding garment. And the king sees him. Son, how did you get in this house? You don't have the wedding garment. And the scripture says the man was speechless. Ladies and gentlemen, understand something. On the last day, when we stand before the awesome judgment seat of Christ, which every one of us will face, there is not going to be you standing there saying, oh, but Lord, you don't understand. No, you will be speechless. You will be speechless. And the king says to the servants, cast him out, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. You see, ladies and gentlemen, hell is filled with nothing but regret. If I would have only. And yet, before we come to the wedding feast, the Church of Jesus Christ invites us to take seriously this faith and embrace it with intentionality and purpose, and to begin to unpack this glorious treasure of the faith that we are inheritors of 20 centuries of wisdom and beauty and insight and spiritual tools laying at our feet. You know the reason why we're going to be speechless? Because it is going to be obvious we are without excuse. The unbelievable mercy and kindness and goodness of God lavished on us, lavished on you and me today, right now, in this place, means that what will we say if you would have just done more? No, precious angels. on this day before Labor Day when we don't do any labor on Labor Day, unusually named holiday, let us consider the unbelievable invitation of our God to come and celebrate with Him the marriage of His Son to His church. Let us embrace and dare to trust that the tools of our spiritual maturity are given to us in this place if we only will take it. Let us then square our shoulders and say the most powerful prayer you and I can ever pray. Lord, have mercy. And let us do the diligent work of purposeful orthodox and adorn our souls with the beauty of humility and love for one another, so that we might have the right answer before the awesome judgment seat of Christ. Nothing less is what we're offered today, precious angels. And you will need for the rest of your life nothing else. Amen.